So what we talked about, Terrell, when we ran downstairs was, we can run through the budget and the totals, and then see what, and then compare that with the funding and see how much you want to use in reserves.
Okay.
So, on current expense, we know we're gonna take that up to 80,000 because of John's wage.
Okay.
So your new, budget total is gonna be 13,415. 116 roughly. That is subject to change
Okay.
if we, have to change the contribution for juvenile, but if we do, then we'll just see what we decide to use for fund balance and see what we need to use. Okay. So, if you look at your total your total budget for general fund, 244,000 is only capital outlay, but again, we've got, that's because we don't have the jail, the roof in there, and their project.
Yeah, because
So
that's
then-
coming out of PILT, right? Or
No,
the
it's coming out
project?
of here, but it's considered operating because
Okay.
it's not gonna add value to the, it's not gonna extend the life of the building. So, that's one of those things that we know is in the budget, but isn't added as capital, so.
Well, your roof, I would.
$800,000 to that capital amount. There's just so much that's in operating that.
Yeah, I would
Those are
show
prime
your roof
examples.
though as a capital expenditure, because your roof is a one-time, and it should be something that's expressed because it does continue the life, because it is,
Right.
it's considered a life, health, safety issue for the building.
But for GASB reporting purposes, I can't add it to an asset because it's not going to add life to the building. So in order for me
Well-
to capitalize it.
But no, it's considered, that's considered, like in engineering terms, the roof is considered your building life is actually based upon your roof.
Right.
And so like if the roof, where we're at, because we're out, and now you're gonna do a TPO roof, it should extend life expectancy of structure for at least 20 years. So, see what I'm saying? So
But
like,
if the rest of the building is already depreciated and only the roof is not, then I'm depreciating the roof without a building.
yeah, and that's what.
So those numbers have to match.
And that's the problem is we're not talking about depreciation factors, we're talking about how.
But in order for me to put it in a 900 line, we are.
But we gotta explain that to people, because it's
We do.
not an operate, and this is where the problem that we run into is the life of the building is based solely, the roof is your main factor. When you go in and you determine the life expectancy of a building, whether a building is no longer functional or serviceable, the first criteria is the roof. If the roof is gone, the building's done.
Yeah. They're two different concepts.
I know, and that's the problem
So,
is how
what-
do we just,
what we
I mean,
need-
can you make a note in there?
Yeah.
So
And
where
we'll-
anybody who pulls the budget will see, this is, it's gotta be so somebody sees it. Their operating line item just isn't because that's there.
We've got a lot of non-recurring items within operating budget. So somehow we'll have to communicate that, and that'll explain why we're using what we're using in reserves.
Okay.
Because that's just one of them, but then you've got retirement payouts. Those are non-recurring most
Yeah.
of the time, unless they're not used that year, like the needle keeps rolling.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
anyways, there'll be some non-recurring.
Yeah.
But, so right now, we have budgeted to use 2,035,000. We have 5.6 in excess. What would you like me to change that
In
number?
current expense?
Yeah.
I would say like, and this is kind of just, as I went through my notes right quick, current expense, again, we're trying to close the gap on the 124. Basically from the discussion yesterday, we take the 8.5 million off of the grant, and that's a rough number of 216,780. That's just what our change was yesterday. And if we can, because like I said, we're not gonna close the 3%. There's no way we're gonna close that $780,000 in there. But I was thinking in that $150,000 to $300,000 range, try and close the 215, and if you take like your current expense, you have 5 million in there is left after you had already budgeted, because you were taking 2.5 out of there, correct?
This 2 million that I'm projecting to use is not taken out of this 5 million.
Okay,
No,
so-
you have to subtract that.
So we're at 3 there. So
Right.
like if you put another 75,000 on that one, and like I was saying, I was thinking, and this is just me thinking in my head, your current expense, I had a couple of them tagged. Current expense, road and bridge, juvenile detention, PILT, any of them that had large ones that you could take, 25,000, 50,000, whatever, and buy all of them,
Okay.
create some gap. Does that make sense?
Yeah. How much, how much in property taxes are you wanting to?
So what I would really love to do, and
From what I have.
it makes it easier in the legislative discussion of the argument, what I'm gonna have to come fight, because I know Moyle's already on the rampage right now with the Ada County Highway District, and all these other ones, is, look, we tried to limit your budgets, and you guys didn't even listen to us, and you just took it anyway, so we're gonna come after it. If we could get down to where our budgetary increase, instead of going 3%, is, I would really love 1.5% or 2%. I don't know if we're gonna get there, I don't know how that is, but if we could come into that, it makes the framing of the argument for this next legislative session a lot easier for me to have numbers that shows that we only took a 1.5% or 2%, instead of us saying, well, Commissioner Tubby, how much did your county take? Well, we took the full 3%. Well, that's why we're here. You guys are blah, 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 and you took your new construction, and,
So with that said,
But
if
the
you,
other side of that
I totally get it.
is this year, they said, see, you guys are wasting money. You're overspending, you're doing this and you're doing that, and we're gonna walk right in there and say, yeah, you were right. We was wasting all this money. I mean, there's both sides of the
Well,
coin.
what we can say though is, and this is how I look at it when we frame that, is no, we only took 1.5%, 2%, but we had to use our reserves, which we can't do next year.
Which they said.
Well, you have too much
way
reserves. Hey,
reserve.
we followed your guidance, and we burned off reserves. There's no more reserves next year that we can burn off then. Because that's their whole argument is, well, if you guys would just get rid of your reserves and all this stuff, you wouldn't have to, they think that reserves, I don't know how the legislature thinks reserves accumulate, but they think reserves just must accumulate. We just get this amount of reserves every year. And they don't understand that that's the money that we don't use in a year that goes there.
They look at how much surplus did the state of
Well,
Idaho
yeah.
get this year?
Well, we got surplus coming in. Don't, hey,
We-
Christie, we have the surplus machine downstairs, right? No, but that's what they're looking at, and they don't understand that. The only way we were able to do this is we burned reserves that will not be available then next year to do the same thing. And so that's the point of the discussion of how we have to frame it. That's how you get the, what are you guys gonna do next year? We're the property taxes of what you're saying and the rules that you put in place and how you want us to do this, we were able to mitigate it this year, and next year, there's nothing that we can do about it.
so here's what we can do, the highest of 3 years for just the top half of your funding sheet is $25,099,189. So, do you want me to get to that number for property tax request and not use any of the 3%?
Well, so that would be a differentiate, of, what was that, 750,000?
752,000. Right now, we've only used 700,000 of the 3%.
Like I said, if we can back it down,
So do you only want to use half of the 3%?
I would love to be able to do that. I just know
I
that.
can make that happen easily.
I know, I just,
If we're gonna do it, I mean, there's enough in there that, I mean, all you gotta do is say it and it'll.
Yeah, I'll just
we
make it
can-
happen. You just tell
we
me
can
what
do
you
it.
want.
Comfortable?
Absolutely.
what do you want to go for? What number do you want?
If we can do, how big of a deal is it to give us two scenarios, or 1.5 and maybe 2, or does that
Or,
even make sense?
I don't think there's enough differentiation. I mean, if you can get down to 1.5,
Let's look at 1.5,
see where we're at.
and then,
Because this is the whole thing, and this is where, yeah.
let's look at 1.5 and see.
Okay, so if I just use half of that 350, so use 375.
Because
Okay.
that gives us the ability then to frame an argument. We
I
can't
can
do
do
this
that.
next year.
Okay, I think that's doable. I'll just get a little more aggressive with reserves. We do have the money.
I know.
It's just
Well, the problem is we're
being
gonna,
comfortable using it, and if you're comfortable using it, we'll do it.
Well, and we'll be able to justify it.
Yeah.
I mean,
but it can't happen again next year. And that's the
Right.
whole point of this, is the way that they're talking about, and they think reserves because we're gonna have surplus like they do. They think that we're gonna have this year, we just got more revenue money and all this other stuff too, so we just got the same amount of reserves from last year as we're gonna get that this year too. And that's where we gotta be able to say, this is gone. There's no more of this.
So let me do
Yeah,
some
we can do that.
quick math.
And like I said, there were some of them, I thought there was a little capacity, and if there is, great.
There is.
And if it's gonna put us, we need to have our operating monies in there, because, again, we don't get revenue like the state where we get it all the time.
I'm gonna do a guesstimate of what that will put the levy at.
You're doing a swag?
Yeah, assuming my calculator on my phone will go out that far, and it will not. I'm 1 digit short. I could put that together and.
Turn it sideways.
You won't-
Turn it sideways.
I almost did.
Actually, hey, your calculator, mine has it,
It goes to like a scientific
are you on
calculator.
scientific mode? You might be able to hit, see if your calculator.
You know what, how about if I do this? Let me just run downstairs.
Yeah, see, it does go to scientific mode if you turn it sideways.
And it goes out a little bit through something.
If it does. You have to have it set though. My last phone wouldn't do it. I actually downloaded the Texas Instruments TI-84 app for my phone. So that's how you know you dork, when you have a TI-84. If you know what a TI-84 is. My niece was
I haven't run one in a long time.
My niece was making fun of me though, because she's like, Uncle Ned, yeah, we don't use those anymore. We use this one. And she pulls out this new one. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, space calculator.
We need to bring a 10 key in here next time, during budget times.
I usually bring my laptop, even my laptop would have had it, but I didn't want to pack it. I don't think we'd need it. I do have an extra 10 key though. The county only, and so far we've only talked county only, so you need to look at the other departments too if you want. But if you look at the levy rate without the governor's money, actually even with the governor's money, it's just the county amount is $367.83 per taxable 100,000 is what last year's was.
With the governor's money?
With the governor's
Uh-huh.
money. This year, it's gonna be $421.75, depending on
Per 100,000 of
how
that.
the,
Right. but-
Yeah.
depending on how the operating value comes in. I don't have that yet,
Okay.
and I won't have that till September.
And we didn't have any TIFs closed
So,
this year, or
nope,
any
not
major
till next
things?
year.
Amy's Kitchen and all that stuff doesn't fall off until next year? Is that this year?
No, Amy's isn't, I
It's
don't
next
even
year.
have Amy's on the radar.
It's next year.
Okay, Chubbuck closes next year. That
Yeah.
one's gonna be
Chubbuck-
huge.
Chubbuck does.
And so does, Western States Cat came off the roll. 'Cause they
That's
came.
a 602 and that's on the other.
Oh, yeah, but what I'm
No.
saying is.
Right,
but
but
they're
that
coming-
doesn't,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that just adds,
But they're getting added
that
on.
adds
And what was the other,
space.
and then that we
But,
had as well?
um,
The Great Western Malting, Amy's Kitchen, and.
Western Cats and.
Yeah, but
they've
there's,
got a rolling
theirs
cost
depreciates
for
so
the-
fast that it doesn't.
Well, when we added some premium mills, so
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I don't know what that number was, but
Um,
Well, the value of the county grew by 5 cents.
So yeah, that's $53.92,
Alright.
that it will go up tentatively for just the county,
Without the governor's money.
without the governor's money. So if you wanted to compare apples to apples, we're going down, because without the governor's money, the levy should have been $455.94.
Yeah,
So
so
we're on that.
$30 up.
But that's not what the taxpayers are gonna see.
No.
So, okay, now if you want to, now do you want to look at Road and Bridge? Do you want to take less with Road and Bridge? Because I took, for Road and Bridge, we took the highest of 3 years, 3%, and new construction.
Again, on.
So if we just do the highest of 3 years, plus 3%, we would be at 22,748,046. I can use more in reserves there,
Mm-hmm.
so we can either take that. Now granted, I also used 38,000 in new construction, so.
On road and bridge, weren't we already talking about using 890,000?
Well, that was because we got a payment.
Okay.
That was from,
But I-
that was one-time monies anyway.
Oh, right.
But,
Yeah.
let me,
But they have,
they have.
oh, wait, I'm looking at the wrong, wow, I was looking at the wrong levy on that one. I turned the page over and I didn't realize I turned the page over. It's like, that's not making sense. My notes aren't there anymore.
If you just want to use the highest of 3 years for them, that's 2,668,000. So we would have to use another 120 in reserves.
On road and bridge, did you factor in the increased revenue through the assessment and the impact fees?
Yeah, they won't, the assessment side, the new construction side, that's what you're talking
No,
about?
the $5 that we're going up or whatever it is per household.
That's what I said.
Lead plant.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right, sorry.
No, you're good.
So you're talking 150 to, was all that their increase is?
So if I only give them the highest of 3 years,
Uh-huh.
it's 2,668,000. So I would have to use another 120,000 in reserves.
And they have 3 million there, and you're
Yeah,
using
I can
890
do
to,
that.
I would do that.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's gonna drop that levy, and that didn't have governor's money, so that should help that one out, so I'll use that number.
When the
Road
tax
and
bill
bridge
goes
is
out,
going up
anytime it
2.5.
goes down, can we have that like in
Yeah,
bright
Um,
colors?
it's gonna go up 200 and, I'm gonna use 2668006 for property taxes. So that's a difference of 120,000. Yeah, so I'm gonna use another 120.
This
there.
went down more.
Um, that. Ambulance, I apologize, but we gotta use both.
Well, an ambulance is just what it is.
Yeah.
That's just, we just know that.
So,
And then,
mosquito. Okay, so that was gonna be a little bit bigger discussion based on if we do any changes of personnel.
yeah,
So that's why if you look to the very right of that sheet, I still have $20,000 that's extra in there using the, for property taxes, I used the highest of 3 years, 3% and new construction. So if you wanna make salary changes in there or add a position, that was why I left that 20,000 on there so that you could see what that was gonna talk, or what it was gonna look like. I wasn't real sure.
so mosquito had a change of budget, hold on.
And they do have some pretty decent reserves, but I was aggressive in using 48,000 of that. And we are no longer building in there. The reason they had such high reserves was when they originally put in place, they asked for the moon, and
Yeah.
then we've slowly taken it down.
Yeah,
That one's hard to gauge. We left the budget alone in the clerk's recommendation just simply because they will be under new direct
yeah,
management.
just leave that one there then.
But you need to tell me what you want to do for salaries. Do you want to just give them the one person at 50% and extra help until we figure it out this year, see how it works before you decide to make a structural change? Or do you want to give them the ability to make a structural change? I see both sides. With Dave leaving, it definitely left a hole of knowledge. So that does require upper management to step in, which that's upper management's job, is when you have short staffing, you cover it.
Cover down?
And then you get somebody in place and you move forward. So there's pros and cons of adding staff. Adding somebody that would be a constant in that department, I'm in favor of that, but then again, I'm also in favor of sign that prior approval form that you have looked at, and let that guy figure out what he wants to do, and then change it next year. But money really won't change next year unless they figure out how to make some cost savings.
Yeah.
Well, there's still a little more conversation here to me. I mean, I thought we was headed in a direction when we left this meeting the other day, and it kinda just blew apart, in my opinion. And then the question come up, does this department have to be under road and bridge? Does it have to be under public works?
And I don't believe so. That was when mosquito was voted in as a new fund. Dan Copeland was the public works director, and he just, at that time, the commission just took it under and kind of consolidated it with noxious weed because they both kind of had similar purposes. I don't remember if Dave was the weed superintendent at that time, but no, I don't think he was. I think they gave him mosquito, and then when the weed superintendent left, they consolidated the two, consolidated the two departments for oversight. So I don't know that it does need to be under it, but,
A lot of them, because it's its own independent taxing authority, they actually stand as alone. I looked last night, I went and dug through a bunch of, and there's county, and again, it's kind of a mixed mash of how they've just, where it's been.
other option is do outsource. I mean, you could outsource noxious, you can outsource mosquito. I don't know if there's people out there that want to do it.
So, right now, just budget purpose wise, it doesn't matter who ends up, where we end up putting it. I think that these are the funds that are put in there at the present time.
Yeah.
Without a new structure already before us. You're thinking.
Well, I'm just thinking about leadership and management of that, and you said, does it have to be there? Can you move it to another department that has a leadership in place and has some capacity to kind of oversee that? And that way you get the salary savings of not having to have a new, you give whoever you assign it to a slight bump in pay for the additional responsibility. But then we save the salary of 40 or 50,000, whatever it is.
That's only half, because right now that position is halfway funded in noxious.
Right,
So
but
if we
you
make-
get some salary
Yeah,
savings if you
but I mean, if
move
we-
that somewhere else.
If we make a change, if you no longer have that split between noxious and mosquito, and you want noxious to have a leader 100%, we're gonna have to change noxious's budget.
Oh, I was thinking both of them.
Yeah.
Did I miss that part of the
No,
discussion?
no,
I missed that part.
I'm talking about, I'm just talking about.
I'm working on my communication.
We've had some,
skills.
we've had some
More coffee.
discussions, we've had some discussions about like outside maintenance of the county.
We need that diagram on the back wall. What kind
But you know what I mean, that's what I'm saying, is there's some other discussions, and I'm just very frustrated on this department. This has caused me, some,
This is gonna take probably a work session that will be outside the scripted budget.
It is,
So-
and that's what I'm saying.
Do you want to proceed with the budget that we have? I can reduce property taxes by the 20,000, which means we won't be taking as much here. In fact, if we take the highest of 3 years, that's 161,000. That's easy to do. I could even leave. So what I could do, we could put the property taxes at the highest of 3 years, which is 161,710. We could add a line item within the A budget for, to basically to fit.
salary allocation.
And then we just won't assign it anywhere
Yes.
at this point. But then that would give some money in there, and it probably won't be enough for a position, but it would at least allow us to move on and have budget taken care of. But unfortunately, I don't think we're gonna be able to make a decision on anything, because if I cut, go to page 69 and that's the mosquito budget. So what I could do is,
That would work.
What,
did you come up with something you just?
Well,
what aha moment did you just
Dan
have?
the man has all the certifications to be
the weed certification or weed superintendent?
Well,
No, not that he would do it,
Oh,
but he would be,
That meets the qualification.
they're using his
certification.
licenses right now, actually.
And if we're talking about merging inside maintenance and outside maintenance and creating that one department that has all that,
Well, I was more thinking like an inside and an outside, but, outside.
Right.
I was just thinking lawns and snow, but I didn't even consider weeds and mosquitoes.
right.
I mean,
If we're getting creative, that could potentially work.
Well, I think right now for the budgetary purposes, what we do then is, what Christie's saying is you go in and you just in line A, you just say, you're gonna assign, additional funding, additional help line item, and you would just fund an additional $25,000 there. And then what would happen is when we determine through however that structure would go, you would just reallocate those funds in. If you change those, or if you don't need them there, or if you, because like I said, we might not have it as a manager's position, maybe they just need a full-time position made whole, or a part-time made whole.
So, and if we're gonna do something like that, Dan would need an admin.
Yes, there
I
has to
mean,
be.
there'd have to be,
Which is cheaper than,
oh, yeah.
And that's why I say you
100%.
just take what Christie's talking about, the monies and revenues, and we would just put them in an additional help line item right now.
so what that would look like is, if we only use the highest of 3 years, what I would do is I would change, between salary and benefits, that new total would be $87,630, which is an increase of $16,054.
that's an increase to the
Mosquito,
mosquito.
to the mosquito budget.
Okay.
So, and in that way, I would be using the highest of 3 years. We'd actually only be cutting $5,000 in property taxes, leaving reserves where I have them, and other revenues is only $3,500. That won't change either. But then that would put the new budget, allowing that, if you would like to see what that looks like. So probably, let's see, 16,000 divided by 0.2. So we would have about 12,000 in salaries, 13,000 in salaries, and the difference would be in benefits. Rough math.
Well, if we schedule a work session for Tuesday to discuss this, we'll not have a decision made in time to do it in the budget line.
I don't know if you'd be able to get it in time to do that. That's a lot of, and this is one thing that I just, caution, is that I would rather have just temporary line items set with that. And if we need to take the next 2 weeks or 30 days to really make sure we understand that before we do
That's what I
that.
meant. If we did that, and we came back and met on Tuesday in executive session to see the viability of this.
I think you could start working on it, but I think we'd start working on it on like Tuesday, but I seriously think we need to take some time to do some analysis on it, and we really need to go through it and maybe think on it a little bit, because this one thing I don't want to do is just make another, hey, we're going to do this, and then next year we're back to, yeah, that didn't work.
But what's wrong with that?
Nothing. And I'm just saying, I just want to make sure that we need to do something. If we're going to do that, we need to set it as priority then, and that's got to be this next 2 or 3 weeks. We need to go through it, and we really need to analyze that for staff capacity and what we're doing.
Right, and I don't disagree with that at all.
That's my main thing, is I don't have a problem with having that discussion, and I think we should. But what I don't want to have happen is hey, Tuesday, yeah, sounds great, let's do it, man.
So,
We did
just
one.
looking at it, this isn't a big amount of money to me.
No.
Mosquito, and that levy is small.
Yeah, it doesn't-
and stuff. So why don't we just leave it exactly like you have it right now?
Well,
Because that still gives us them funds. I mean, we can change the title,
Yeah.
but still have
The
those
funds are there.
And just, because
so do you want
It's
me,
there.
do you want me
Right.
to
I'm
just
okay
use
with
the highest of 3 years?
I-
Or do you want to use more tax money? I mean, what do you want the bottom line to be,
I'm,
expenditure wise? Because right now I have $20,000 more than I need to, so we can save taxpayer dollars a little bit. It's not a ton of money, it's really not going quite too much, but
And that's
it-
where
I
it's
would-
just,
at.
where
I
do you
would
wanna
just-
have?
I'd probably just leave that
I
20,000.
would leave the
Just leave it right
20,000.
now as it is, and
Okay.
let's just move.
Yeah.
And,
No,
and
I
the-
misunderstood, and you're right, I think the way you're talking about is
Okay.
fine. I just want to be able to meet and make a decision. If we're gonna do it or not, that's fine. And if we have the money set aside, it's just a matter of moving it around afterwards.
So I'm gonna have the new budget for mosquito is gonna be $218,055, and I'm gonna put that $20,679 up between A and benefits. Okay, that is what I will do.
Great.
The other thing to help you think, not like you need more to think about on this, but, mosquito where it is seasonal,
Uh-huh.
hopefully season will be done-ish around October when the new year starts. You could take a little bit of time to make the decision through the fall, and then, that way you know you're making the right decision. And if you did choose to have somebody that's already certified, then they could take action 6 months into the year, so your money may only have to come in for about 6 months of the year. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Some of the salary
So
savings.
that might allow you to utilize a little bit more money if you're only using it for 6 months or 9 months. Now, granted, we'll have to look at the impact of that, over next year to make sure we be able to fund it,
Yeah.
but. Okay. So a quick summary, I'm only using the highest of 3 years and 1.5 of the 3%. For property taxes, the rest is coming from fund balance or reserves. Road and bridge, I'm only gonna use $2,668,6, and we're gonna add 120 to reserves for road and bridge. Ambulance, we're leaving alone. Mosquito, I'm adding 20,000 to a budget. And then, I'm going to add an allocation amount for the share program for the treatment counselor to do a grade increase there to what the department requested, which was, I believe, 1 grade.
Mhm.
1 grade. We're gonna move John from 911 to IT. And then we're going to adjust the grades, 1 more grade for, Seth for his attendance, shift supervisor, and lead. Okay. And then that may or may not change your contribution to the detention center. If it does, you'll use reserves to cover that.
I'll own that one.
Okay. Well,
Okay,
so would you like?
Oh, before we
Oh.
dismiss, we gotta talk about the PIO, if that's
Yeah.
even worth having anymore or not. And my push, or my renewed interest in it is, last week at NACO, I went to a meeting with, and granted, it was a PIO meeting, and there were probably 100 different counties there. And of the 100 different counties, 80% of them had a PIO. And of that 80%, I would say there was probably 25 to 30% that were smaller than us that still had
Yeah.
a PIO.
Well, and so kind of the whole thought of, and I agree with you, that's been one of the things that's been burning, and kind of the point of, when the chief of staff position was made, that was kind of part of it, but it's never, I mean, and Scott actually was able to start filling that role because of his background and his experience and what he did. But that, I think, would be the discussion then, is, I mean, are we busy enough, to have a full-time PIO? I don't know. I do think that, you know, and again, there's kind of those roles, there's an analyst position in our office and the chief of staff position, that there's some discussion of could we modify one of those positions into doing that. I mean, but I agree with you. No, we need to have, there's a lot of that. The biggest problem that we have is we have, a lot of times you get news media and other people that start calling individual employees. And we really need to be able to say, you know, folks that back the PIO, they can call individual elected officials all they want, and that's up to the elected officials to say or talk, whatever. But part of the problem that we have is when you have issues or things that are going on, getting the correct information. That's the biggest thing. It's not trying to limit information. It's that we want to make sure that the correct information is being given. I read all the comments about like the driver's license thing, and there are a bunch of things in there, and really that's where your PIO would help monitor and even comment back on some of those things. No, that's not correct. This is the story. No, this is, you know, and so that's, we really need to look at doing something that way. But I just am not very comfortable with a full-time position.
What if, so tentatively, you guys have given us another accounting position, which should help us immensely. I don't know how many projects you guys did your purchasing and economic analyst, but what if you shifted that position to purchasing and information officer, and then our office could assist you with some of the projects, as far as like running scenarios, looking things up, stuff like that. Shanna does, I think, a good job representing herself and the county. So I think that way, I think she could be a good fit if your chief of staff restructure doesn't work out to include it that way. But, I mean, then you wouldn't have to create a position for information officer. You could gauge it, see how much time it's going to take. If it's going to become a full-time job, then in 23, we'll make it its own position.
Well,
I think finding the right person's the key here.
Right.
Scott, I had no problem. I mean, with him
Yeah, he could talk.
presenting, he could fill both positions. But
And I'm gonna
filling
argue-
that
I'm gonna
with,
argue that they can't.
but filling that with somebody that's the right person, to me, is a big
Well,
challenge. It's-
yeah,
Well,
we got, yeah.
I'm gonna argue that whoever does it, I think needs to be full on, because you've gotta master the social media, you've gotta master content production, because this person not only stands for the media, but then is the salesperson for Bannock County to the world with our social media marketing, things like that, getting information out. It's a bigger position than just
Well,
doing
and-
it part-time.
And if you also included it into where it was also part of, not only was it public information in that marketing aspect for like the wellness complex, event center, fairgrounds, all of that stuff as a multiplier on top of it, because then I think then that starts the discussion of having enough full-time work to start putting it in, because there's a lot, the biggest problem that we
Like
have.
Jason, how many hours did you spend on elections every year?
Oh.
Answering media inquiries and doing that?
On well, last year was
Nuts.
exponential.
Right.
But every election, it is at least a couple hours a week for depending on what's going on, a couple hours a week with different media outlets.
And it's just not that kind of stuff too. It's some of the PSAs and some of the stuff you look at like Ada County and some of the stuff that they do, where they have somebody who's actually put stuff together for a message from your office, where it's just not you talking to them, but they do all of the work, the production, they do everything, they put it together.
Right.
You look at like the treasurer's office on tax season. You look at the assessor's office on assessment. That's the person that does all that. And right now, the production is hey, I'm going to try and make this work, and then I may or may not get back to it,
Right.
because you don't have time to monitor it or do that.
And one thing to think about, for me personally, it's a little bit self-serving, but if there's something that's going on in one of my offices, I want to be that mouthpiece so that the public knows that I'm engaged, because
Well, and
I'm going to talk about those things.
But that's where the PIO though is making sure that
I'm engaged.
You're
with
engaged.
Who I want to be
and they're
engaged
helping
with.
you to be engaged.
And the other thing that the other counties talked about is that PIO, even though you're the one that's the face for your office and maybe the one that's engaged, that PIO is in it spreading that same information to everybody else. So if they call you and then call somebody in the commissioner's office, we have the same talking points. We're all on the same page and we're not coming at it from two different directions. So it's not necessarily removing things from you, but it's helping make sure that your message is consistent.
Well, and the other thing too is in an elected official, if you have something that you're doing, if you put out a message and they help make sure that that message is put out, then as there's additional stuff that's coming back for feedback, that's getting filtered correctly, that's getting, addressed. Because one of the worst things in social media land is we want to use social media and we start using and talking, but then we don't go back and check up on it. And we get all these comments and people just get mad. Oh, look, they're not even really, there. And that's the point of, hey, Jason, we had these 8 comments. What does this mean and this mean and this mean? But that's their job to respond back to.
So just following this, I think if we look at the position and see if we can fund it, and then this is the discussion we have at 3 o'clock with all the elected officials, because I don't think it's just our decision on this one. I think, how are we gonna use them?
Yeah.
You as an elected official have to make a commitment, or we as an elected official have to make a commitment to utilize this individual. Because if we don't utilize the individual as the elected officials, then there's no purpose.
Okay, so
I would just throw a ballpark.
what dollar amount?
This is a swag. I would say 40 to 45,000.
Yeah.
That's just a swag. I haven't looked at it.
I'm pulling up entry-level public affairs jobs. I just want to see anything near us.
We've talked about it for quite a while, and this is a good time to bring it up, but I think still,
Yeah.
I'd like the elected officials to have a conversation about it.
The entry-level in Provo, Utah is 31 to 52. So I think if you put it at the 40, I think you're in the ballpark. Yeah, you're in the ballpark.
Okay. We'll put that in the commission budget. How do you want me to fund it? Use that. Use that 1.5% and then reserves?
Yeah.
Or, so basically it would be reserves.
Yeah. Trying to do, and like I said, we may or may not, or we may, yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I think so. We need to do something.
Am I okay to communicate with Christie to do the morning session?
On Monday?
On Monday?
Yeah.
So that we can bring all of this back to you, and then you will see hopefully what will be the final.
With one caveat, we don't start before 9. Because on Mondays, I don't know about you guys,
It's already at 9.
I have more flipping emails.
It's at 9 o'clock right now.
Okay.
What if we just have her put it at 10?
10, oh, yeah. That's fine.
I mean, it's on the calendar.
She has a
but-
tentative for 9 o'clock right now.
Okay.
Let's just do 9 o'clock.
Let's do 9 then, that's fine. Just, yeah.
So
When we,
what's up, Carol, get here.
well, no, what happens is,
If I can make it, you can.
what happens is we change the schedule and somebody will always call me and they'll be like, hey, can I meet with you first thing in the morning? Yeah, sure, I don't start till 9. So
Yeah.
Go ahead and come on in. And then that's the one day it's like, no, we're starting at 8:30.
Oh.
Or trying to get.
I'm sorry I screwed up your schedule, Carol.
Well,
Okay.
it's just one of those things. We try and do that to be respectful, though, too, of like you guys and staff, is to give you guys the chance. I hate having meetings at 8 o'clock in the morning right off the bat. You walk in, you're not prepped for the day.
That's Benny if me coming at 7.
Well, you come in at 7.
Then I can be prepared. Plus I can get stuff done before everybody else shows up.
But that's the. Just,
No, I'm with you. So I will have all of this, we will have all of this put together for you, and then, the only thing we've added then is that, employee, which will probably be about, we'll have to add benefits, so it'll probably be 50,000, 55,000.
Okay.
Once we add the benefits and health insurance to it.
And, honestly, after our meeting today, Jason should have better understanding of all this can talk with you.
And that'll be super easy for me to pull it out, even if we have to take it out on Monday. So that'll be easy, but then, and I've also got, now I have values, so I'll be able to get you
Yeah.
what the levy rates look like. It's still not gonna be final because I don't have operating, but at least you'll have a better idea. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And just so you all know, this has been a very smooth budget. So, thank you.
Almost even fun.
Huh?
Almost even fun.
Don't go that far.
I wasn't going that far. I said almost.
But you
No,
used
but
the word.
the information that we've all shared,
We've got a good path for next year.
Yeah. I can't see how it would have been much easier. I mean, the way that it all has worked, it's been really pretty slick. We've hit a few curveballs and had a few questions, and
What we figured,
that's the way it goes.
what we figured to
That's
do
fine.
is some of the talking meetings that we've been doing with the department heads. The big thing is the department heads are starting to get, more information on that budgetary expectation, so I think a lot of it gets everybody, okay, I'm not gonna do that, why are we just doing it this way or that way? And I think it really goes a long way that, yes, we are paying attention to your departments, we do understand what's going on, but it's just not your department that we're focusing on.
Well, and we're gonna go do a budget 101 with the sheriff's office, the
Yep.
sheriff and jail at some point. Tony wants his people kind of have a grasp, which I think is a good thing, because then that helps them know what they submit, how it affects, why, and all
Well,
that.
give them a discussion too of the other departments out there and
Oh,
kind of the,
That's always a part of it.
Yeah.
The one I did, I think it was a year and a half, 2 years ago, the one I did at a department head meeting, I still have that basic template. I gotta tweak it a little bit with the new House bill stuff, but,
still gonna play the
That's
game
gonna
with
be
the
the
different
same.
colored balls or something. We're gonna do that.
Still love that idea.
we need to do it. we
Bring
just need to do
everybody
that a
in and-
little sooner.
all right.
At the beginning of budget.